My name is Adrian Nicole LeBlanc, and I'm the author of Random Family. And I like to say LeBlanc because I was raised to say it that way, but once I came to New York, people started to say LeBlanc, but I'm back to LeBlanc
Adrian
now.
LeBlanc has always felt like an outsider. She admits to being an introvert and attributes choosing her subjects as a reflection of herself, picking outcasts and outsiders to write about. When LeBlanc isn't working with the destitute, she is writing constantly. Her most recent article was published this month in the November edition of the New York Times. She wrote a book review on author Bob Herbert's book titled Losing Your Way. In her review, she gives us a peek into her thoughts and into the view of her world. In the words of LeBlanc, Herbert's book is a call to action as he tackles issues surrounding a crumbling American infrastructure and highlights specific cases where Americans are quickly falling from middle class to a lower class. LeBlanc wrote the following in her review. My father taught me to see what was missing from neglected public spaces. The opportunities rooted in overgrown woods, trash-strewn highways, and busted public parks. You could give young people work cleaning land, and they'll be part of something, and they'll learn useful skills, he would say. Bob Herbert shares the same pragmatism, shaped by the America he came of age in, which still assumed a common good and treated the challenges facing its individual citizens as a collective priority that we could solve. Losing our way is a brave call to action, not simply to put people back to work, but also to link the work to the necessary interests of an egalitarian society. The newest refugees from the American dream, however, are stunned. Their inability to connect their ruin with their lowlier brethren is something I wish Herbert could have examined more. But they are in a new environment and full of vulnerability.
Adrian Nicole LeBlanc grew up in the working-class town of Leominster, Massachusetts. She studied at Smith College, Oxford, and Yale University before becoming editor for 17 magazine. While at the magazine, LeBlanc learned of the trial of drug dealer Boy George, and later this would become the basis of her first book, Random Family. Her style is the type of writer that believes research is a crucial part of the process. In her case, observation is key, so much so that when working on her book, Random Family, LeBlanc took 10 years to produce the final copy for publishing. LeBlanc was so involved in the process that she soon left the magazine to continue working on the book. Much of this process was spent with the subjects featured in the book, and along the way, she seemed to have let the act of following her subjects take over her life. Here is LeBlanc's thoughts on research and writing.
It's usually a very strong instinct that feels as if I'm going on a road trip with a really fun friend or something. It's I would say like a reckless feeling, but a good recklessness, like, oh, we're going somewhere, where are we going? That's the feeling. Grown as a journalist, I've come to see that perhaps was a fantasy or working fiction of mine. I felt invisible. I mean, I felt that way much of my life. And I also know that's a ridiculous thing to say, and yet I've come to own up to my presence in my reporting more.
Revelations. One, which makes me very sad to say, is that and I do a lot of writing about the inner city, and I'm more confused as to why things like this don't happen more often. And I guess the second thing is I see a loose connection in something I'm trying to explore this year in some work that I'm doing between domestic violence, between spouses and violence in the home, because there seemed to be in the time that I spent in the home of one family a sort of continuum where there would be an antagonism between the parents, and that would sort of spill over, and the kids would get the mother out of being the object of focus, and that the resentment would build in a way that I think the kids would just take out to the streets. I guess the other thing I think a lot about is that we talk so much about violence, and we sort of feel we know what the story is, and I feel that we're just beginning to look closely at it, and it requires spending a lot of time in places that are very painful and quite frightening, and I can understand the urge to sort of theorize rather than look very pragmatically.